Welcome to Rocky Mountain Marketing. I'm your host, Katie Brinkley. Join us as we dive deep with the world's leading digital marketing experts every single Tuesday. It's all about giving you the strategies that are working right now, directly from those who are making an impact. With my 20 years of experience, I'm here to help you navigate the world of digital marketing. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills or transform your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started on today's journey to success. Welcome back to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. I'm sure many of you have gone to some sort of event in your lifetime, whether it was for business, whether it was a conference, whether it was thousands of people in attendance. Maybe you've been thinking about hosting your own event. I had to bring in somebody who you say the word event and their name is synonymous with the word event. My guest today is none other than Phil Mershon. And Phil and I had the opportunity of getting to know each other at Social Media Marketing World and through the Social Media Marketing World Facebook group. Another very important thing to keep in mind here, folks, of the things that go on and the importance of building community both before and after an event. Because Phil and I met at Social Media Marketing World. We got to know each other's names due to this Facebook group. But everything changed for me, my business, and my relationship with Phil when he invited me onto a platform called Clubhouse. Yes, Phil Mershon invited me onto this crazy new app that was taking the world by storm, Clubhouse. I really got to know Phil over the next few months when everyone was spending time over on that never-ending conference call. And Phil's been doing this whole event business for a while. Phil is the director of experience for Social Media Examiner, and he's been designing the Social Media Marketing World experience for over a decade. And I've only been going to Social Media Marketing World since 2020. But again, he is the man behind the curtain when it comes to planning all the amazing things for Social Media Marketing World. He has been doing this for over 25 years, creating these customized events. And in addition to that, he's an amazing saxophonist. He loves pickleball. He is the author of this incredible book, which you typically see on my bookshelf, Unforgettable. And he actually also signed my copy for all of you watching on YouTube. He signed my copy. I've gotten to spend some great time with him at these events. I want to talk about events today because whether you are planning an event for your business or you just enjoy attending events, I want you to know all of the intricate pieces that go into the event planning process and how community is so important from the time you decide, hey, I want to have an event. So Phil, thank you so much for joining me on Rocky Mountain Marketing today.
Man, that was an event just coming on your show. I love it. And I forgot that Clubhouse was how we really first connected. So were you one of the ones that I gave one of my invites to? I remember
sure
having
was.
a few of them and putting it out there in the Facebook group. And okay, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
We started there and it's grown. And I think we very quickly discovered that you live in Littleton, Colorado, and I lived there for a few years, and that's where my wife and I first lived when we got married. So we have a Colorado connection going here.
Well, and I think, Phil, that's why you gave me one of those coveted invites for Clubhouse, is because I was from Littleton and had the Littleton roots as well. I think you're like, oh, this girl, I'll go ahead and give her one of my invites. I don't have very many.
Okay.
She must be okay. It is crazy to me with Clubhouse, all the connections that it made for me. Now it is a defunct app, but the magic really that did happen with Clubhouse when it was growing and launching and really evolving. Some of the connections that I still have because of that little app. I'm so thankful to have you as a connection because I've learned so much, not just about social media, but myself. I've read your book. Like I said, I held up Unforgettable. I've read it. Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas, has endorsed it. Jay Baer, he's one of the OGs in the world of marketing. He's endorsed it. And there's so much that goes into an event that I think a lot of people have no idea about before they decide, well, A, I'm going to go to it, or B, how to really maximize my experience at this event. That's something that you really hold near and dear to your heart, is what is the experience that people are going to walk away with from my event? So before we dive into that, I'd love it if you just told us a little bit about how you got into this whole event experience space, because social media marketing world is one of the biggest events out there for social media marketers. People come from all over the world to go to this event, and it really is an experience that keeps people coming back to year after year. How did you get into this space?
Well, I mockingly say I started when I was 7 years old, and we were in the living room after church one day, and I lined my brother and sister and all the stuffed animals up, and I became the preacher, and I created an event right there. But in all seriousness, when I had my first job out of college, I was a computer programmer, believe it or not. Didn't know that I was a creative at that point in my life. But I went to this training program and I watched what the guy did who led it. And I went up to him afterwards and said, I want to do what you do someday. How did you get where you are? He said, well, I was a pastor for 30 years. Then I had a heart attack and my doctor said I can't be a pastor anymore. So here I am. Does that sound like a career path you want to follow? And I said, no, that sounds terrible. But funny enough, about 10 years later, I did end up in a job doing it. That's probably where it started. So I was working for Koch Industries, a big oil and gas company here in Wichita, Kansas, where I live. I was doing management, leadership, economic, new employee orientations, all these different kind of trainings while I was there, and I was loving it. I really did enjoy it. Unfortunately, that was not a career path within that company because they really valued other things at that point. So that wasn't going to be a long-term fit for me, but that's where I got my first taste. And that's where I got the people saying to me, man, that was the best training I've ever been to, and I started wondering, well, what am I doing? Is it that good or is the bar that low? And my initial assessment was the bar was that low, that he didn't have to do much to exceed their expectations. But over time, I realized something. And then after that, I actually went into church ministry for about the next 12, 13 years and was a pastor of worship. So I was designing all kinds of creative experiences, doing retreats and events and so forth. During the Great Recession, my job in that space was eliminated. And so I found myself without work. And I knew Mike Stelzner. I was actually out in San Diego. And so Mike said, hey, I've got some temporary project work if you need something to do while you're trying to find your next gig. So I said, I'm glad to have anything that I can do to extend my unemployment benefits. One project led to another. And after about 10 months, he had a part-time contract that he offered me. That's when I started doing a lot of online events. So I helped him doing some of the early social media success summits and other summits that we put on over the next few years before we put on the first social media marketing world. I've been part of the social media marketing world every year since 2013. So we've had 11. We had to skip the year of 21 because of the pandemic. I was there the first year that you were there at the conference, and remember you being a very active member in the Facebook group. And I think it was the next year you became one of our ambassadors where you were there welcoming people because you had just been so active the first time around. So that's a little bit of the background. I would not have known that I was going to be in the events industry when I was young because my degree was in economics. I did not know I was a creative, but later on, when I left Koch Industries, I had an outplacement agent say, man, you're the most creative person I've ever met. How did you survive at that company? And that's what started me realizing, okay, I've got something more to explore than what I realized. And I'm not just a musician on the side.
Yeah, but a lot of the stuff that you're doing with creating these events, you do need to have that like dot the I's, cross the T's sort of way of thinking, because leaving no stone unturned. And I think that being a creator of a truly unforgettable experience, what you are doing at these conferences, you need to have that creative energy, but knowing everything has a reason and everything that we're doing has not just a reason, but a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
Why are we going to have this Facebook group?
Right.
This is the purpose. Why am I starting the customer journey 9 months out? Well, this is the purpose, because this is what I want people to walk away with the day they walk into the event. Let's actually start there with our conversation today with the customer journey, because it's no different for the customer experience journey than it is for the customer journey for outsourcing a social media agency or launching a podcast. Like the customer journey, and that's so important, but the customer experience journey, that is probably something that no one's really talking about, and it starts months in advance.
Yeah, if you talk to enough event planners, event strategists, they will talk about the experience journey, but typically speaking, that starts when someone lands in the city and more likely when they get to the venue. So if it's at a hotel or convention center, that's when the journey starts that they're mapping out. And I agree with you. It starts at the point of purchase. Like the day you make the purchase of a ticket, your journey started there. Now it's marketing's job to get you to say, yes, you're coming. So I say, as an experience designer, while I am concerned and interested even in the experience that they're creating up to the point of purchase, that's not my responsibility. I can advise, but it's not my responsibility. But it does become my responsibility as soon as you say, I'm coming. Phil, I'll see you next March in San Diego. So you've made that decision right there and then. Your journey has started. Now, for the most part, you're not thinking much about that journey for the next few months, depending on when you do it. If it's only a couple months out, it looks different than if it's 9 months out. But I'm still thinking about you. I'm still thinking about, you know what? You probably want to know when we've got hotel rooms available that you can book. So I'm going to be corresponding with you. And I know that most people, when they're preparing for an event, they get much more intensely interested in the event probably about 3 months out. That's around the time that they're booking their travel. They want to be sure by then that they've got their hotel booked. And then about 2 months out is when we will open up a Facebook group, because now you're getting specific about wanting to make plans. You want to know, hey, when are the sessions going to be? Which ones am I going to go to? Who are the speakers? And we've shared some of this stuff, but we're trying to anticipate what are the questions that you're asking. We know probably half the people coming to an event are planners and they need to have all the things figured out. And then other people are like shoot from the hip. They're from Colorado. We're wild, wild west, and we're just going to make it up as we go. They won't look at that information until they get on site. Those are two extremes, obviously. Most people are somewhere in between there. So you're trying to take care of them, and they do want connections. I'm thinking about you. You came to that first event. You didn't know very many people, if anyone.
No, I
That
knew no one.
Facebook group became a place where you could start making plans. You could start meeting people like yourself. And it's my firm belief, if you show up to a place where you didn't know anyone and now you've got plans to at least meet a couple of them, you're going to feel much more comfortable. It's like, okay, I know
Yeah.
I've got some things on the calendar. A lot of people coming to these events feel socially shy, socially reserved, socially awkward, whatever term you want to use. Some people will call that introverted. That's a wrong use of the word, but I understand the intent behind it. They're going to hold back when they're around a lot of people. You want to be thinking about, how do I help people feel comfortable? Like that first moment when you hit the ground and you show up somewhere and you don't know where you are, that can be the most awkward moment, and it can be a deciding moment. If that's awkward and people feel like, I'm not sure I really belong here, I don't really fit in, these aren't my people, no one's including me in their conversations, it doesn't take very long for they move from those feelings to, you know what, I think I could just watch this event on live stream back in the hotel room, maybe do takeout food or dine in to my room or whatever, and never do anything. And then
Yeah.
they're like, well, that event was awful. I didn't really participate, but you didn't take care of them. So I try to think about all that stuff that happens before they ever step inside the building.
And that's a really important takeaway, I think, that people need to pay attention to, is that people can watch a lot of these things online now. They can just go to a virtual event. Why do they want to leave their house and buy a plane ticket, book a hotel room? Why do they want to come and experience your event? So if somebody's sitting there listening to this and maybe they've never thought about the event in that sort of way of, oh man, yeah, it does start there and people could just watch it online. What is their incentive? And they're thinking, I've always wanted to do an event. What would be, I know that you have your 3 M's to really creating that that unforgettable experience. Let's talk about what those 3Ms are.
I'm starting to call that the unforgettable framework, but it's memorable, meaningful, and momentous.
Ooh.
So memorable is just that. It's something that's going to stand the test of time. It's usually unexpected, something that you weren't looking for, a surprise and delight kind of moment. You mentioned Jesse Cole. I don't know if you saw this, but he recently showed up dressed as the poop emoji because it was supporting some kind of nonprofit, and he just did something you wouldn't expect because he's normally wearing his bright yellow tuxedo, but in this particular instance, that was unexpected. You're going to talk about that. It's unusual, something that's just way out of the ordinary. So we've had musicals at our conference. I just today was talking to a team from 3M. We had a mural this year that was all 3M Post-it notes. That was unusual.
Yeah,
It got people talking. Right?
It was cool. I watched, I think I was there for the placement of the very first Post-it note this year. That was really cool, seeing the final product. And then we all got to put little stickers on it saying when our very first experience at Social Media Marketing World was. It was cool seeing, okay, some people came in 2018 and there was like, oh, a ton of people came here. And then it was really neat to see where people had their first experience and seeing that go over the course of 3 days from when they first creating the 3M board and until the day that we walked out at the end of the conference and seeing the evolution of that. It was a neat experience. It was memorable. I'm talking about it right now on the podcast. How many months later?
It was memorable. And so many people participated in it. And again, that was both unusual and unexpected. The third part of the memorable is usually it's multisensory. So the more senses that you stack together, science has proven, increases the likelihood that you're going to remember something. Most learning events only rely on auditory and visual. And we know that even if you just do auditory, unless it's an auditory learner, the likelihood someone will remember it's way low. If you add visual to it, it increases. And I'm forgetting the stats right now, so I'm not going to make them up, even though most stats are made up. We're not going to do that here. You heard that, like 78% of all stats are made up. And I just made that up. So the more senses, and particularly olfactory, the sense of smell. So that is the quickest path to someone's memory.
The sense of, wait. The sense of smell, because that was not what I was expecting you to say at all. I don't know if I don't remember what Social Media Marketing World smells like.
Well,
do I?
We don't overemphasize it. And the larger the event that you plan, the more careful you have to be with the application of this, okay? Because people have so many sensitivities these days that you want to be careful that you don't trigger it. My wife just yesterday brought home a couple of lilies from our church because it was Easter Sunday. And that's what you do, right? Lilies.
Yeah.
Well, I am actually somehow hyper allergic to lilies. Even when she took out the little bulbs that have all the pollen in them, I couldn't handle it. I had to actually take them outside this morning when I got up because have that kind of response. So we're careful with it, but we will have light smells of different kinds of essential oils. I believe we had, what's it called? I'm not going to remember. Oh, eucalyptus. We had some eucalyptus plants when you checked in. We usually have some kind of tropical or aromas when you first arrive. That's where we usually put the placement because we're trying to help people relax and feel refreshed. So we'll have natural smells like oranges and citrusy kind of smells. We've done this where we've had a vat of coffee and a fan blowing it across the networking plaza, the space where people are having coffee breaks. So it smells like you're in a Starbucks or somewhere so that people will linger.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm getting all the secrets. Like you're saying all of these things and I'm like, yeah, actually, I do remember that plant now. Wait, I do remember that now that I know like the insider secrets. I'm like, well, yeah, no wonder I wanted to hang out in the networking plaza. And I always felt like energized in there. It was because there was coffee right there and the smell of coffee filled the room and it mind blown right now.
Some of this stuff we've done more and less of over the years, but there are tools available to you that can really emphasize. So sometimes we'll have popcorn machines. And popcorn is one of those simple smells that reminds you of carnivals and circuses and state fairs and stuff like that, right? Well, it puts you in a happy state of mind when you smell something like popcorn. And it's a very simple thing. It's not very expensive to get a popcorn maker, and way better, by the way, to have the popcorn maker than to have them make it in the back and bring the bags out, because the smell of the popcorn being made is actually what you're paying for. We don't actually care how many bags of popcorn are consumed. Well, we do because it costs, but we're more interested in, let's put people in a state of mind where they're fun. They're more likely to hang out. Sponsors love that. Hey, if
Yeah.
people are willing to hang out and talk to us, and attendees want to have longer conversations, and speakers do too. So if you do simple things, and it can create a memory hook for some people.
Yeah. I still remember the sponsor that was doing the iced coffee at their booth for Social Media Marketing World this year. I still remember the champagne, happy hours that another sponsor did. All those little things are creating that memory.
That taste right there is going to stick with you, and you probably remember who those sponsors were. We don't have to name them here, but it's connected to that experience. They created a connection, and that's going to be more memorable than if it was just another booth.
And now for a quick break. You've heard me mention some of my favorite tools on Rocky Mountain Marketing in the past, and today I want to talk to you about Podmatch. Podmatch is the tool that you need if you're looking for more shows to guest on to elevate your brand authority, or if you're a podcast host yourself and you've been looking for the perfect guest, Podmatch is your solution. Podmatch matches guests and hosts through their system, and I've had a tremendous luck with them over the past 5 years. Check out Podmatch at joinpodmatch.com/Katie. All right, let's get back to the show. So we talked about the importance of the customer experience journey. We talked about the 3M framework. Is someone sitting here and they have never planned an event before, or maybe not even that they've ever planned it. Let's say they've had the goal, their 2024 goal is to host an in-person event. What experience should they be thinking about before they plan anything else? Because I feel like that is something that's extremely important before you decide to say, okay, we're going to have it at this hotel. It's going to be this day of the week. These are the attendees. I feel like they need to know what is the big experience that they want their attendees to have, because they're going to be able to have those aromas. They're going to be able to have that experience for people the second that they walk into the event center or the hotel space. What advice would you give someone as they start this event experience journey?
So it starts with some strategy questions. It doesn't even start with experience. It starts with, what do you want people leaving thinking and feeling? And why did they come? If you know why someone's going to come to the event, they came to learn, is different than they came to get leads, versus they came to just get some ideas, versus they came to make some new friends. What is the goals that people have? The bigger the event, the more varied those are, right? But there's still themes that you can lean into. And so I would tell you, when they leave, what are they thinking about? What stories are they talking about? What do you want them to be feeling in that moment? Because that's going to drive the experiences that you're going to create, which will inform what should the venue look like. Because content can be delivered in so many different ways. You and I have both been there in San Diego, and there's this huge amphitheater across called the Rad. I think it's called the Rad Amphitheater, or Shed. It's called the Shed Amphitheater. And we could go over there and we could do sessions on that huge stage and have 1,000 or 2,000 people in the audience and be outdoors. That'd be a very different learning experience than going inside of a convention center. Or we could go rent a yacht and we could go out on the water. I mean, what are you trying to create? It really does start with, what is your end goal? Obviously, you've got to factor in what your budget is when you're considering these kinds of things. Like, is there a price point that you think your customers are going to be able to afford? But also, do you have a budget you're willing to commit? Do you have a sense of how many people are going to come? All those things are going to affect some decisions that you make about experience. But I would say it starts with, what are they going to feel when they leave? Are they going to be remembering the connections that they made and the profound conversations that they have? Or is it going to be the learning that they had that's different maybe than what they can do online? Because for sure today, you're creating content right here. We're both content creators. People can learn from us online. Like they don't have to travel to an event to learn some of the things that we might teach, but they learn in a different way when they're there. But it really, the reason they're sitting in that room listening to you speak is because the conversations they can have afterwards, where they can stand in line and get the outside the room wisdom. Richard Bliss spoke at our conference this year on LinkedIn, and I've heard numerous people talk about the knowledge bombs he dropped in the hallway that weren't on the recording, that the only people who got them were the ones who hung out with him in the hallway or at the lunch tables or wherever. And those are the kinds of things that are irreplaceable. So, to back up to your question, starting with, what do you hope people are walking away with? Because if that's important to you, having hallway conversations, then you certainly better have a venue where there's large hallway kinds of spaces where people can have gathered conversations. If it's a typical hotel with narrow hallways and it's dark in the hallway where no one wants to hang out there, then that's not going to be very fun and people won't do it. They're going to be like, get me out of here. I got to get through here as quickly as I can. I need to be in open space where I don't feel claustrophobic anymore. I really don't want to be here. And they forget, because they go to those base level needs where I need to feel safe and secure. I need to make sure my physical body needs are being taken care of and that I don't feel like someone's going to get me because I'm trapped right now. They're not going to be in that higher state where they want to have these deep conversations that could be the transformational thing that they came for. So the experience you're creating is accounting for all of those things, but it starts with the strategy. You have to have a very clear view of when people leave, what are they feeling? What are they doing? What stories are they going to tell? Because now we can orchestrate it. We can get the right venue. We can put all the right pieces in place to design that experience.
One of the things that, for me, after attending social media, I know we're talking about social media marketing world a lot, and that is just one of the events that you are in charge of being the experience curator of. And you've written your book, you do speaking, you have your coaching that you help people with. I know we keep going back to social media marketing world, but it is where we got connected. I want to talk about, for me, the reason why social media marketing world for me has changed my business is because of the community that has been curated. And whether I am having the conversations in the hallway, I could probably watch some of this stuff online if I wanted to, but it's the people that I've connected with there and the hallway conversations that happen with the speakers where the true magic has happened for me. The events, the dinners that happen, the party for the VIP, it's the all access party that happens. That's where the memories have been made for me, where at the end of every conference, I say, well, I got to go back. What? I wouldn't go back? No, of course I'm going back. I think that with all of this, it comes back to community. And the community that you're building, it can't happen alone. I mean, Phil, you're amazing. Let's just put that out there. You're amazing, Phil. But you have a very incredible team that you put together to create an experience that builds community. And building community can be hard. It can be really hard to do in a digital world. It can be really hard to do when you have 3, 4, 6,000 people in attendance. But you've still been able to figure out how to do that. And I think that it really does come down to building a team around you that has that same goal and that same experience vision in mind.
Yeah, let's be straight here. We talked earlier about it's art and science. So you've got people who are detail-oriented planners, which I've got some of that in me, but I'm really more of a logical strategy-oriented on that side of my brain, and then a creative. I'm not the person you want looking over your spreadsheets to find all the mistakes. I will find some mistakes because I just can't help it, but I won't find all of them. But you need people on your team that are like that. Community builders is a different skill set. And most event planners are probably not that. Some of them are. Some of them love it. Some of them, that's what they live for. So what I've figured out is I need to find temporary staff and volunteers. And even leaning into someone like yourself, Katie, who I've asked as an attendee coming back, just said, hey, would you be ambassador for a couple of weeks and just help people feel welcome? Because I know you do it anyway. And that's what I'm looking for, is I'm looking for the people who don't even need much encouragement. It's like, hey, it's okay. I'm going to call you an ambassador, but just do what you do. And that's the ideal scenario. If you're an event planner, find those people in your community who love building community or just natural connectors to join you in that effort, whether it's an online or in person. And I would argue, because of our earlier conversation, it's got to start online. Like, the better you can build some sense of community online, you're never going to get everybody. Just be okay with that. We did better this year than we've ever done, Katie. We had 1,400 out of 1,800 people in that Facebook group, and most of them were active, which
Yeah.
I've never seen that. Maybe they were just checking to see if there was something that they missed. I don't know what they were doing when they were active, but they were active.
Yeah.
The stats told us that they were. But that started because we had ambassadors who went in and they welcomed every single person who came in. We had a team of moderators who are just naturally gifted in getting conversations started and making sure the conversation continues. And there's a snowball effect. When you get community kind of in traction, and it's helpful when you've got people who want it, but there's a lot of people who are suspicious. They're not sure. We had so many people who found out about our event, not through Social Media Examiner properties or emails or anything, but through a Google search. They just were looking for social media marketing conferences. They found us and it looked like the reviews were good, so they thought they'd give it a try. And they were pleasantly surprised by what was happening in that Facebook group. Then they were able to start making plans. And that's where it moves from online to in person, as you start making plans for dinners and parties. And, hey, I don't have anyone to go to lunch with on Sunday. Is anybody else going to go see that Katie Brinkley session that she's doing, or whatever it is? As soon as those plans start to be formulated, now all of a sudden you've got this sense of community. And community does not mean 1,000 people. It might mean 5.
Yeah.
And 5's good enough for many people. Like, that might be all the circle of friends that you need going into an event. And
Yeah.
many people form more relationships than that, but you might walk away with 3 friends, and that might be, you might feel incredibly satisfied because those are 3 people you're going to actually stay in touch with, versus all the names that you're going to forget a month later.
Absolutely. I think that one of the biggest things to keep in mind is that to have a successful, because I've gone to a lot of events and there's a lot where I'm like, I don't know if I need to go back to that. There's events where I say before the event's even over, like, well, I have to be back here again next year. It's those events where, looking back, I'm like, they were getting me into their community long before I ever showed up at the event space. I already felt like I was a part of something before I walked into that building. I think that's what creates an unforgettable experience. Well, Phil, I mentioned it earlier that you do speaking, you have a coaching program for people that want to learn more about the whole event experience. You have this incredible book, Unforgettable. Tell us where we can learn more about you, where we can connect with you, where we can get your book. Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So go to philmershon.com and you can order my book if you live in the United States there, or it's also available on pretty much any online book shop that you would go to. All of my social platforms are also at, the coaching program's not up there yet. Depending on when this releases, it might be, but you can also just email me, phil@philmershon.com. There's both group and one-on-one coaching available.
Amazing. Well, Phil, this has been an unforgettable experience. Thank you so much for joining me. This was a great conversation, and I really hope that everyone who listens to today's episode dives into the community of an event before it ever takes place, before they ever walk through that door, and be mindful of what's going on around you and taking advantage of the opportunities that can happen at these different events that you go to.
Awesome. Katie, we talked about ending with a signature sign
Yeah,
off.
let's do
Would
it.
you like to do that?
Yeah, Phil, I hear you have this incredible signature sign off.
Well,
Can I hear that?
it. Let's do it. Here's what I need from you so that we can create this moment together. All right.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
So I need 3 emotional words from you that arise when you think about the conversation that we've just had. And it can be any kind of word you want to think about that will help you remember this conversation.
Okay. Should I tell you them or do I just think them?
Well, I'm not that good.
Oh,
I was the whiz when I was in sixth grade. So you talked about me being the guy behind the scenes, but
yeah.
I'm not that good. I don't read minds yet. I have not mastered that. So go ahead and verbalize
Fine.
for me.
So insightful. I know it's not really one word, but mind blowing. I was really blown away when you talked about the smells
Mm.
and community.
All right. So insightful, mind blowing, and community. All right. So you mentioned earlier that I'm a jazz saxophonist. So this is my signature sign off. I play an original, one of a kind song just for you and your audience based on your reaction to the conversation that we have. So this will be, we're going to call it mind blowing.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. I hope you're leaving with valuable insights and the inspiration to lead your market. If you've enjoyed our time together and found today's podcast episode useful, I have a small favor to ask of you. Please hit that subscribe button to stay updated with the latest episodes. And if you know someone who could benefit from these episodes, maybe a fellow business leader or an aspiring entrepreneur, go ahead and share this episode with them. Let's spread the knowledge and grow together. Also, I'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation beyond the podcast. Visit me at katiebrinkley.com to connect, to find more resources, or just to share your journey. And be sure to pick up your copy of my new book, The Social Shift, at katiebrinkley.com/book. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Katie Brinkley, and I can't wait to dive into more strategies and stories with you on the next episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. Let's keep on taking your marketing to new heights.